This is How-Tos with Aaron. Alright guys, today I'm going to show you how to install Freedom handrails. These are easy to get from Lowe's. They come with the parts pretty much ready to go, and I'm going to be mounting them in between these posts that I made. So this is the bracket, goes on the sides to attach your top and bottom rails. And it comes apart in two pieces. I've got two pieces of 1x4 wood, or about 3 of them, so that I've got it at the height that I want, about 3 inches off the bricks here. And I'm just going to measure where the middle is and get it sitting right in the middle. Now all I've got to do is put my screws in to hold it in place. These brackets have the exact shape of the rails, so it's important that they're sitting completely plumb so that when you try to put the rail in, it doesn't give you problems. I like to just put one screw so that it can move a little bit if it needs to, and really it's enough to hold it in place, but there are 3 holes for 3 screws. Got one side done, now I've just got to do the same thing on the other side. Now I'm going to measure the distance in between my 2 brackets and get the bottom rail cut in. I'm not going to make it crazy tight. I'm going to give it about 1/8 of an inch shorter than the actual measurement. So I'm using a regular miter saw with the metal blade to do my cuts. Mark down my measurement right there. Let's give it a test. It's fitting in nicely. Rubber mallet is a great tool to get things in place all the way nice and tight. You also want to consider where the spindles are going to sit when you're doing your cut. On both sides, you want to make sure that your spindle is going to be sitting not too far, not too close to the post. Once you get it in place, that top piece from the bracket just goes right on top, and you tab it down with your mallet. It's going to need to sit pretty perfectly to lock in, but it'll go. The brackets on the bottom here are what hold the spindles in, and you're going to want to tighten the screws in these so it's nice and snug. The box says don't over tighten it because there is a slight risk of breaking them, but it's not too hard to tighten without breaking. It is important to make sure you don't forget to tighten it up though. Now it's time to get the top rail on, and it's going to need to be sitting at exactly the right height because of how the brackets work. So here's what I do. I take a spindle on each end and go ahead and get it in place. Now I'm going to measure exactly where my spindle is sitting in regards to the post. I've got to keep in mind the shape of my post, how it's a little inset from the side. But basically I've measured where the spindle is so that I know where the top spindle needs to be. Now I'm going to mark that on the top rail. And then I'm going to mark where the spindle is and use the difference of that to see how much I need to cut off the one side of my top rail. Now that I have the left side where it's going to hold this first spindle plumb, I can measure the total distance that I need. The rest of the spindles will naturally be plumb because I have the first spindle plumb. I like to always mark which side is the left side so that I make sure when I put it back in place I have it on the right side so that everything stays plumb. So I've got my top rail cut already. Now I'm putting the top bracket on so that I can put it on top of my spindles, mark where it needs to be, take it off, screw the bracket on, and then put the rail on. Here we go. Let's put it on top of both of these spindles. Looks like it's fitting a little tight. I'm going to need to trim one of the sides. So again, staying on the left side that I want to make sure is plumb, I'm going to measure it and see how plumb I'm sitting or if the left side needs to move at all. Looks like it could be over a little bit, so I'm going to trim the left side so that I can have my top rail sitting right where it needs to be to keep the spindles plumb. Back to the saw. Alright, now let's give this another go. Top bracket goes back on. Much better fit this time. Looking nice. Gonna make sure everything is sitting all the way flat and down like it needs to be when it's done, so I don't have any issues. Now just to mark the top of the bracket on both sides. Then I'll be able to take this off and screw the brackets onto the post. Don't forget to top in the spindle holders on the top rail as well. The brackets come off pretty easily with a little tap. Now as I'm screwing these brackets in place, I'm going to give myself a little grace and go just slightly above the mark, just to make sure that when I tap the top rail down, that the spindles aren't going to keep the top rail from going all the way down into the bracket. Because otherwise, the top part of the bracket isn't going to be able to go on top of the rail. So I'd rather have the spindles have the tiniest little gap in my bracket be able to close. Left side done, now for the right side. Spindles go back in place, and it's time to put the rest of the spindles on. Now to put the top rail on. Getting the spindles in can seem a little tricky at first, but it's totally doable. Just start from one side and work your way to the other. I like to put a clamp on my bracket so that it helps make sure it doesn't pop up on me later and keeps the first spindle in place. All it takes is a little bit of the spindle to go inside the bracket, and as you get towards the middle, I like to kind of raise one of the spindles up just to make sure it doesn't end up coming out on me. Makes things a little easier. Now to take my rubber mallet and make sure it's pressing down all the way in every spindle and all the way into my brackets. It can kind of help to twist the spindle around a little bit to help it fight its way through the little bracket. Now for my top bracket, got it sitting right, putting it on. Easy little tap, goes on pretty easy. Bottom one's good too. And I'm on to the right side. Alright, and there we go. We've got a nice handrail. Let's give this a little shake. Nice and firm, everything's locked in. Super solid. That's how I do it, and that's how you can do it. Hope yours goes good, and be blessed. Don't forget to check out my channel for more amazing videos about how to do cool stuff.